Have you ever considered that the money your children give you might be costing them more than you realize? That check in your mailbox could be written with ink made from their sacrificed dreams, their postponed goals, their strained marriages. Many of us have been raised to believe that adult children supporting aging parents is simply what good families do, a natural reversal of caregiving roles that comes with time's inevitable march. But what if this seemingly benevolent arrangement is actually creating invisible burdens that neither party fully acknowledges or understands? What if the monthly deposits that bring you comfort are simultaneously dismantling the very foundations of your most precious relationships? Society has normalized this financial dynamic to the point where many of us boast about our children's generosity without questioning what lies beneath the surface. We accept their money with gratitude, perhaps even a sense of entitlement, believing we've earned this support through years of parental sacrifice. We share stories with friends about how our daughter covered our property taxes, or how our son insists on paying our medical bills, wearing these financial ties as badges of good parenting. Yet in these conversations, we rarely pause to consider what dreams our children might be setting aside to maintain these arrangements, what tensions might be brewing in their marriages, or what opportunities they're sacrificing on the altar of filial obligation. The truth is that money flowing from adult children to parents creates complex emotional currents that can erode the authentic connection between generations. What begins as a gesture of love often transforms into a transaction laden with unspoken expectations, subtle resentments, and shifting power dynamics. Your relationship may slowly convert from one based on mutual respect and genuine affection to one measured in dollars and cents, where phone calls become financial check-ins and family gatherings carry the unspoken weight of monetary exchange. Is this truly the legacy you wish to create in your final chapters? A relationship where your value is somehow tied to your financial need rather than your wisdom, your stories, your presence. This issue becomes particularly poignant as we navigate our later years, seeking both independence and connection in a society that often diminishes the value of aging. The money from our children can create an illusion of autonomy while actually fostering a deeper dependency that undermines our sense of self-worth and agency. Meanwhile, our children find themselves caught between their desire to honor and support us and their need to build their own futures, save for their children's education, or simply enjoy the fruits of their labor without constant financial strain. This tension often remains unspoken, creating invisible walls between generations exactly when authentic connection becomes most precious and healing for all involved. Today, we'll explore why accepting financial support from adult children might be one of the most costly mistakes aging parents can make, not in economic terms, but in the currency of relationship, dignity, and familial health. We'll examine 8 critical reasons to reconsider this common arrangement, offering alternatives that preserve both your financial dignity and your most treasured connections. By the end of our time together, you'll understand how to transform potentially damaging financial dependencies into relationships built on mutual respect, appropriate boundaries, and genuine love that flows freely without the complications money inevitably introduces. If you find value in these insights, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating life's later chapters with grace and purpose. To illustrate this important principle, let me share a story that brings these abstract concerns into vivid reality. It centers on Diane, a retired teacher in her late 60s, who recently moved to a coastal retirement community after selling her family home. Like many in her situation, Diane faced the challenges of adjusting to a fixed income while managing unexpected expenses. Her story unfolds primarily between her modest beachside apartment with its small but cherished balcony, the community garden where she's found new friendships, and her son's home in the nearby city. The central characters in this tale include Diane herself, who narrates her journey of discovery with candid insight. Her son Curtis, a marketing executive whose success has become both a source of pride and an unexpected complication. Nora, Curtis's wife, whose perspective offers crucial insights. Wendy, a new friend who becomes Diane's confidant in the retirement community. And Howard, Diane's brother, whose different approach to family financial dynamics provides an important contrast. We meet Diane on a warm evening as she sits on her balcony, watching the ocean waves, while reflecting on a realization that has profoundly shaken her understanding of family relationships. The gentle breeze carries the salt air as she contemplates society's normalization of parents accepting money from adult children, a practice she had unquestioningly embraced until a recent discovery forced her to reconsider everything. If this message resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more insights that can transform your relationships. In their golden years, have you ever considered that the money your children give you might be costing them more than you realize? Diane muses, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup as the setting sun casts long shadows across her small balcony. The check in your mailbox could be written with ink made from their sacrificed dreams. This thought troubles her deeply as she recalls how her own understanding of family support has been upended in recent weeks. The comfortable certainties of her retirement years have been called into question by a conversation she never expected to have. One that revealed the hidden costs of what she had assumed was simply natural family care. After retiring from 30 years of teaching and downsizing from her family home to this more modest apartment, Diane had faced unexpected financial strain when medical bills began consuming her carefully planned savings. Without complaint, her son Curtis had begun sending monthly deposits to her account, a gesture she accepted with a mixture of gratitude and maternal pride. She even found herself mentioning these deposits in conversations with her brother Howard, who had come to rely heavily on his daughter's financial support. "We raise such caring children," she would say, never questioning what might lie beneath this apparently simple arrangement. But a birthday dinner was about to change everything she thought she understood about family, money, and the true meaning of generational support. Diane's revelation began on her 68th birthday. Curtis and Nora had insisted on taking her to her favorite seafood restaurant, a charming establishment overlooking the harbor. The evening started pleasantly enough, with Curtis presenting her with a beautiful scarf in her favorite shade of teal, and Nora bringing a homemade cake she'd somehow managed to bake despite her hectic work schedule. Yet, Diane couldn't help noticing the subtle tension between them, the way Curtis constantly checked his phone for work emails, the tightness around Nora's smile when she thought no one was looking. "You're working too much," Diane commented as Curtis apologized for responding to yet another message during dessert. "Surely they can survive without you for one evening." Curtis gave a strained laugh, glancing quickly at Nora. "It's just a busy season, Mom. This new project is demanding, but it's temporary." Nora's knuckles whitened around her water glass, but she said nothing, simply offering Diane another slice of cake with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The slight tension persisted throughout the remainder of the evening, and by the time they dropped her off at her apartment, Diane sensed something significant remained unspoken. She kissed them both goodnight, watching with concern as they drove away, their silhouettes in the front seat noticeably apart, not conversing. Later that night, unable to sleep, Diane stepped onto her balcony. The sound of raised voices drew her attention to the parking lot below, where Curtis and Nora stood beside their car, apparently continuing a discussion that had begun during the drive. Though she couldn't make out every word, fragments floated upward on the night air, Can't keep doing this, Nora was saying, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The kids hardly see you anymore. What choice do I have? Curtis's response was sharp with frustration. It's not just Mom now. Uncle Howard called again about his roof repairs. What am I supposed to say? Sorry, you'll have to let it leak. You could say that we have our own family to think about, Nora replied, her voice breaking slightly. This second project means every weekend for the next 6 months, Curtis. 6 months of you missing soccer games and dance recitals. 6 months of me explaining to the children why Daddy's always working. Diane stepped back from the railing, her chest tight with sudden understanding. The monthly deposits, the occasional extra when unexpected expenses arose. She had assumed these came from abundance, from Curtis's successful career, yielding more than enough for his family and a comfortable margin to share. It had never occurred to her that he might be stretching himself thin, taking on additional work specifically to support her. The next morning, Diane was still processing this disturbing realization when Nora unexpectedly appeared at her door, a tote bag of groceries in hand. I thought I'd drop these by on my way to work, she explained, her smile warm but her eyes revealing lingering fatigue from what had clearly been a difficult night. Curtis mentioned you were running low on a few things. Diane invited her in, and as they unpacked the groceries together, she gathered her courage. Nora, I couldn't help overhearing some of your conversation with Curtis last night. Is he really taking on extra work because of me? Nora's hands stilled on the box of tea she was placing in the cupboard. After a moment's hesitation, she turned to face her mother-in-law. He didn't want you to know, she said quietly. He was afraid you'd feel bad or refuse the help. But this second project you mentioned, is that really just for my benefit? Nora sighed, sinking into a kitchen chair. Not just for you, for his Uncle Howard too. Howard's daughter can't manage all his expenses anymore, so Curtis has been quietly supplementing what she can provide. She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit Diane had noticed before. The truth is, Curtis took this weekend project specifically to cover these family expenses. He's working 60-hour weeks now, and when he is home, he's exhausted or distracted, worrying about whether it's enough. And your marriage? Diane asked softly, already knowing the answer from what she'd witnessed. We're struggling, Nora admitted, tears welling in her eyes. I support helping family, I really do, but the children miss him. I miss him. And the stress is affecting his health. He's not sleeping, his blood pressure is up. She wiped quickly at her eyes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be burdening you with this. No, Diane said firmly, reaching for Nora's hand. This is exactly what I needed to hear. What Curtis should have told me from the beginning. The full weight of the situation settled over Diane like a physical pressure. She'd been accepting money from her son, believing it came easily to him, while in reality it was costing him his time with his children, straining his marriage, and potentially damaging his health. The realization made her physically ill. This painful revelation led Diane to deeply reflect on the nature of financial support between adult children and their aging parents. Through her own experience and subsequent conversations with others in similar situations, she identified 8 compelling reasons why parents should reconsider accepting money from their adult children. Hidden sacrifices. The first and perhaps most troubling aspect of this financial arrangement is that children often conceal the true cost of their support. This deception, though well-intentioned, creates a foundation of misunderstanding that can damage relationships in profound ways. Curtis never told me he was working weekends to send me that money, Diane explained to Wendy as they tended to their plots in the community garden the following week. He presented it as if it was effortless, something that cost him nothing. And I believed him because I wanted to, Wendy nodded thoughtfully as she deadheaded marigolds. My daughter did the same thing. It was only when her husband let slip that they'd cancelled their vacation plans that I realized my small monthly supplement was actually a significant drain on their resources. The problem with these hidden sacrifices is that they create an imbalance in the relationship. One party makes decisions based on incomplete information. Diane had spent her monthly deposits without much thought, occasionally treating herself to small luxuries she might have reconsidered had she known their true cost. Meanwhile, Curtis shouldered an increasing burden, wanting to appear capable while maintaining his mother's dignity. It's a kind of well-intentioned deception, Diane reflected. Our children don't want us to feel like burdens, so they hide the effort behind their support. And we don't ask too many questions because we don't want to seem ungrateful or intrusive. This dynamic prevents honest communication about financial boundaries and capabilities. When adult children conceal their struggles to provide support, parents can't make fully informed decisions about their own spending or explore alternative financial strategies. The relationship becomes clouded by unspoken truths, creating distance precisely where closeness is most needed. Relationship distortion. Perhaps even more concerning than hidden sacrifices is how financial support can fundamentally alter the parent-child relationship, transforming it from a bond based on emotional connection to one increasingly defined by financial transaction. Diane noticed this shift gradually in her relationship with Curtis. After he started sending money, our conversations changed. She told Wendy as they walked home from the garden, cloth bags filled with fresh vegetables swinging from their hands. He began asking about my expenses, suggesting ways I could economize, not in a controlling way. He was always kind about it, but there was this new undercurrent, as if my financial decisions were now partially his business. She paused, looking troubled, and I found myself censoring what I shared with him. I wouldn't mention the art class I was considering or the new shoes I'd purchased, afraid he'd wonder if I was being frivolous with his money. This subtle shift can erode the authentic connection between parent and child. Financial support creates an implicit accountability, with the provider feeling entitled to some influence over how their money is spent, and the recipient feeling obligated to justify their choices. What begins as a gesture of love slowly transforms into a business arrangement with unwritten terms and conditions. I noticed it most during our weekly phone calls, Diane continued. They used to be filled with stories about the grandchildren, discussions about books we'd both read, or his advice about my garden. But after the money started, there was always a point where he'd ask, "How are you doing financially? Is the amount I'm sending enough?" It became the subtext of every interaction. This financial focus can also trigger complex power dynamics that reverse the traditional parent-child relationship in uncomfortable ways. Parents who once made the decisions and provided the support find themselves in a dependent position, while children assume an authority that can feel simultaneously burdensome and potentially corrupting. The worst part, Diane admitted, was when I started feeling resentful if Curtis spent money on something for himself or his family when I was struggling with an unexpected expense. I'd catch myself thinking he could take his family on vacation, but couldn't increase my allowance. The moment I had that thought, I was horrified. That's not the kind of mother I want to be, or the kind of relationship I want with my son. A generational burden transfer. Another critical reason to reconsider accepting money from adult children lies in understanding how these arrangements disrupt the natural flow of resources between generations, potentially creating long-term economic damage to younger family members. This insight came to Diane during a particularly meaningful conversation with Wendy as they worked side by side in the community garden. Wendy's decades as a financial advisor before retirement gave her a unique perspective on intergenerational wealth dynamics. There's a natural direction money should flow in families, Wendy explained, carefully transplanting seedlings. When we're young parents, we invest financially in our children. Then, as our children establish themselves, They should be building their own financial security and investing in their children, our grandchildren. When we accept what should be their savings, we're essentially borrowing from our grandchildren's futures. Diane paused, trowel in hand. I never thought of it that way. Most people don't, Wendy continued, but the math is undeniable. Every dollar your son gives you is a dollar that isn't compounding in his retirement account or his children's education fund. Over time, that represents a significant transfer of wealth backward through generations, precisely when your grandchildren face economic challenges our generation never encountered: skyrocketing education costs, unaffordable housing markets, unstable career landscapes. This perspective struck Diane profoundly. The money Curtis sent her each month wasn't just coming from his current income. It was potentially coming from her grandchildren's future inheritance, college funds, or financial security. While the immediate benefit to her seemed significant, the long-term cost to younger generations could be exponentially greater due to the power of compound interest and investment growth. When Howard's daughter sends him money for his everyday expenses, Diane reflected, that's money that's not going into her retirement fund, not accumulating interest, not growing for decades. By the time she reaches our age, that missing investment and could have multiplied many times over. Wendy nodded solemnly. In financial planning, we call it reverse inheritance. Parents inadvertently inheriting from their children and grandchildren before they've even had a chance to build their own security. It's a hidden wealth transfer that can echo through generations. This realization helped Diane understand that what seemed like a private arrangement between her and Curtis actually had implications for family members not yet born. A legacy of diminished resources rather than the financial foundation she had always hoped to help build for future generations. Interference with financial growth. The fourth reason Diane identified became clear during a visit to Curtis and Nora's home. While looking for a serving platter in their home office, she noticed a stack of business plans and market analyses on Curtis's desk. Later, while helping Nora prepared dinner, Diane casually mentioned the papers. Nora's expression grew wistful as she sliced vegetables. That's Curtis's dream, she explained quietly. He's wanted to start his own marketing consultancy for years. He even had investors interested. She scraped the vegetables into a bowl with more force than necessary, but the capital that was meant to launch his business now goes to family support, for you and for Howard. The revelation stunned Diane. I had no idea, she whispered, the knife in her hand suddenly feeling very heavy. He never said anything. He wouldn't, Nora replied, her tone softening. He doesn't want anyone to feel guilty. But the truth is, accepting regular financial support from your children often means interfering with their ability to build wealth. Through entrepreneurship, investment, or career advancement, precisely during their prime earning and growth years. This interference with financial growth extends beyond entrepreneurial dreams. Adult children supporting parents might forgo advanced degrees that could increase their earning potential, pass on investment opportunities that require capital they no longer have available, or remain in secure but unfulfilling jobs, rather than taking career risks that might ultimately lead to greater success. Curtis turned down a position last year that would have been perfect for him, Nora continued, measuring rice into the cooker. It was his dream role in many ways, but it came with a temporary pay cut and no guarantee of success. He couldn't take that risk while supporting 2 additional households. The implications of this stunted financial growth extend far beyond the immediate present. For adult children in their prime earning years, financial decisions have compounding effects that can dramatically alter their lifetime wealth trajectory. A business not started, an investment opportunity missed, a degree not pursued. These represent not just current income foregone, but exponential growth curtailed. The saddest part, Nora added, looking directly at Diane, is that I don't think Curtis even sees it as a sacrifice anymore. He's so accustomed to putting family financial needs first that he's stopped imagining other possibilities for himself. This realization struck Diane as particularly painful. The idea that her son had not only postponed his dreams, but might have abandoned them entirely, accepting limitation as his natural state rather than the artificial constraint it actually represented. For Diane, understanding how her financial needs were potentially limiting Curtis's ability to build long-term wealth and pursue meaningful opportunities became yet another compelling reason to reconsider their arrangement. She began to see that her short-term gain might be contributing to his long-term financial constraints in ways neither had fully acknowledged. Later that same week, Diane observed another troubling aspect of their financial arrangement. One that affected Curtis in ways that couldn't be measured in dollars and cents, but might be even more costly in the long run. While staying overnight at Curtis and Nora's home after a family dinner, Diane woke around midnight to get a glass of water. Passing the home office, she noticed the lights still on, and Curtis hunched over his laptop, his face illuminated by the screen's blue glow. Thinking he was working late again, she was about to continue to the kitchen when she heard him mutter, "Down another 2%, that's not good." Curious, she paused at the doorway. "Curtis, is everything all right?" He started, quickly switching to another screen. "Mom, I thought you were asleep, just catching up on some work." But Diane had seen enough to recognize he wasn't working on marketing presentations. The screen had displayed financial charts and banking information, her banking information. "Were you checking my accounts?" she asked, entering the room. Curtis sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I just like to keep an eye on things, make sure the investments we set up for you are performing well." At midnight, on a Thursday, after some gentle prodding, Curtis admitted he checked her financial status several times a week, often late at night. He had alerts set up for any unusual activity in her accounts and regularly adjusted her investments based on market fluctuations. What Diane had assumed was a simple monthly deposit had actually become a second job for him, one that consumed not just his time, but his emotional energy as well. "I worry," he confessed. "If there's a market downturn or an unexpected expense, I need to be prepared to adjust what I'm sending you and Uncle Howard. Sometimes I wake up thinking about it, checking the financial news first thing to see if there's anything that might affect your security." This conversation revealed what Diane came to understand as the fifth critical reason parents should reconsider accepting money from their children. The invisible emotional tax that comes with financial responsibility for aging parents. If you found value in these insights so far, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel for more wisdom on navigating these complex family dynamics with grace and dignity. The invisible emotional tax. This emotional burden manifests in numerous ways that affect not just the adult child's mental health, but their productivity, relationships, and quality of life. For Curtis, it appeared as sleep disturbances, constant monitoring of financial markets, and an underlying anxiety that never fully subsided. "I've gotten used to it," he told Diane when she expressed concern about the toll this vigilance was taking. "It's just part of my responsibility now." But Diane could see it wasn't that simple. The weight of being responsible for multiple households' financial security had created a persistent stress that colored everything in Curtis's life. He approached family gatherings with one eye always on potential expenses that might arise. He measured his career decisions not by what would fulfill him, but by what would provide the most stable income for everyone depending on him. This emotional tax extends beyond financial worry to include complex feelings of obligation, guilt, and sometimes resentment. Adult children rarely acknowledge these emotions openly, but they manifest in subtle ways: decreased patience, emotional withdrawal, or compensatory behaviors like overworking. I've noticed my son becoming more distant over the past year, Wendy confided to Diane during one of their garden sessions. At first I thought he was just busy, but his wife told me he feels trapped by our financial arrangement. He'd never say that to me directly. He's too concerned about hurting my feelings, but it's affecting our relationship nonetheless. The emotional burden is particularly heavy because it activates the adult child's sense of filial duty while simultaneously creating a situation where true generosity becomes impossible. Financial support offered under obligation rarely brings the giver the psychological benefits that freely chosen generosity provides. Instead, it creates a complex emotional entanglement where duty, love, resentment, and guilt coexist in ways that can be psychologically damaging for both parties. Sometimes I see Curtis looking at his phone when it alerts him about my account, Diane told Wendy, and there's this flicker of something like dread on his face before he checks it. In that moment, I'm not his mother he loves. I'm a financial obligation he can't escape. This observation led Diane to a painful truth. Every dollar she accepted came not just from Curtis's bank account, but from his emotional reserves as well. Reserves that should have been directed toward his marriage, his children, and his own well-being. The invisible emotional tax was perhaps the most costly aspect of their financial arrangement, yet it remained largely unacknowledged. Delayed life milestones. The sixth reason became clear to Diane during a neighborhood barbecue hosted at the community center. As residents gathered around picnic tables laden with potluck contributions, Curtis and Nora arrived with excitement clearly visible on their faces. "We have an announcement," Curtis said, his arm around Nora's shoulders as conversation quieted. "We've decided to postpone buying the lake house we've been saving for." He smiled broadly, as if this were good news. "Instead, we're putting that money towards something even more important: ensuring our parents' comfort and security." The gathered neighbors applauded, commenting on what wonderful children they were, while Diane felt a growing discomfort. Later, as the party wound down, she found herself helping Nora clean up in the community center kitchen. "That lake house meant a lot to you," Diane said carefully, wrapping leftover casseroles in foil. "You've been talking about it for years." Nora's hand stilled on the dish she was washing. After a moment's hesitation, she glanced around to ensure they were alone. "Can I tell you something in confidence?" she asked, her voice low. When Diane nodded, Nora continued, "It wasn't really the lake house we postponed." She dried her hands slowly on a kitchen towel. "We've been saving for fertility treatments. I've had 2 miscarriages, and the specialist says our best chance now is IVF, but the initial round alone costs nearly $20,000, and with what we're sending to you and Howard each month." She shrugged, leaving the mathematics unspoken. Diane felt as if she'd been struck. "Nora, I had no idea. Why didn't you say something?" "Because Curtis insisted it wasn't your burden to bear," Nora replied, her smile sad but genuine. "He says we'll get there eventually. It might take another year or 2 of saving, but we'll make it happen." This revelation crystallized another profound cost of intergenerational financial support. Adult children often delay significant life milestones: home ownership, starting families, advanced education, career changes, or even necessary medical treatments, because their financial resources are directed toward parental support. These delays can have consequences far beyond mere postponement. Fertility issues grow more challenging with age. Housing markets continue to appreciate, pushing ownership further out of reach. Career opportunities that might have been perfect at one life stage become impractical at another. What seems like a temporary deferral of dreams can become a permanent alteration of life's trajectory. "I've been unknowingly contributing to them delaying parenthood," Diane whispered to herself that night as she sat alone on her balcony, the weight of this realization settling heavily on her shoulders. The money she had accepted without question each month wasn't just dollars. It represented Curtis and Nora's future children, children who might never be born if fertility treatments came too late. This understanding added another dimension to Diane's growing awareness of the hidden costs of financial dependence. Adult children supporting parents often make profound life sacrifices that remain unspoken out of love and respect, creating ripple effects that can permanently alter family structures and individual destinies. False security at autonomy's cost. The seventh reason emerged from Diane's own experience as she began examining how accepting money from Curtis had subtly altered her behavior and self-perception. What initially seemed like enhanced financial security had actually undermined something far more valuable, her sense of autonomy and capability. She noticed this one afternoon while browsing a community college catalog. A series of art classes caught her eye, something she'd always wanted to explore but never had time for during her teaching career. The cost was reasonable, and the schedule would work perfectly with her other commitments. Yet she found herself hesitating, thinking, I should ask Curtis if this is an appropriate use of the money he sends. The thought stopped her cold. Since when did she need permission to take an art class? Since when was her discretionary spending subject to another adult's approval, even implicitly? Yet because the money came from Curtis, she had unconsciously begun to see her choices through his presumed judgment. I've been trading my independence for the illusion of security, Diane realized. She had cancelled her subscription to a meditation app because it seemed frivolous. Never mentioned to Curtis her interest in a senior hiking group because it required some gear purchases, and had even begun buying less expensive groceries than she preferred, all to avoid any potential criticism of how she spent his money. This gradual erosion of autonomy is particularly dangerous for aging parents who already face societal pressures that diminish their sense of agency and relevance. Financial independence, even if modest, allows for dignity in decision-making. When that independence is replaced by support that comes with implicit expectations, the psychological impact can be profound. I noticed it with my friend Eleanor, Wendy told Diane during one of their now regular coffee meetings at the community center cafe. She used to be such a confident woman, ran her own business for decades, made all her own decisions. Now she calls her daughter before buying anything over $50, asking if it's in the budget. It's like watching someone shrink before your eyes. This diminishment of autonomy often occurs gradually, almost imperceptibly. What begins as gratitude for support slowly transforms into a sense of obligation, then dependence, and finally submission. Parents begin to self-censor their desires, adjust their activities to match what they believe their children would approve of, and ultimately lose the confidence that comes from navigating life on one's own terms. For Diane, this realization was particularly distressing because it contradicted everything she had worked toward in her retirement, creating a life that was simpler but still self-determined, with the freedom to explore new interests and make choices based on her own values rather than external pressures. The monthly deposits created a dependency I never intended, she admitted to Wendy. I found myself checking my account balance before making even small decisions, wondering if Curtis would notice this purchase or that expenditure. I've become a child again, except my son is now the parent. Breakdown of healthy boundaries. The CCE final reason became evident to Diane through observing her brother Howard's increasingly troubled relationship with his daughter. Unlike Diane's recent awakening, Howard had accepted substantial financial support from his daughter for years, viewing it as his due after raising her. During a family gathering at Curtis's home, Diane watched with growing discomfort as Howard criticized his daughter's new car. You could have gotten a more economical model and increased my monthly allowance, he commented, seemingly oblivious to the flash of hurt and anger that crossed her face. That foreign model is just showing off. Later, when his daughter mentioned an upcoming vacation with her husband, Howard made several pointed remarks about frivolous spending and priorities, clearly implying that the money for the trip could have been better directed toward his needs. The tension was palpable, yet no one addressed it directly. On the drive home, Diane confronted her brother gently. "Don't you think you were a bit hard on Karen about her spending choices?" Howard scoffed. "She makes 6 figures. She can afford both the car and to take care of her father properly. It's not like I'm asking for luxuries, just what I need, to live comfortably." "But it's her money, Howard," Diane pointed out. "She earned it. And who paid for her college? Who sacrificed so she could have dance lessons and summer camps and everything else she needed to get where she is?" Howard's voice had risen. "She owes me." This exchange revealed to Diane how easily financial support can erode healthy boundaries between parents and adult children. When money regularly flows from child to parent, it can create an entitled attitude in the parent that damages the relationship's foundation of mutual respect. Parents may begin feeling ownership over their children's resources, criticizing spending choices, expecting ever-increasing support, or making decisions based on the assumption of continued or expanded assistance. Diane recognized this erosion of boundaries in her own thinking as well. She recalled feeling irritated when Curtis mentioned taking his family to a theme park while she was struggling to replace her aging refrigerator, a thought that horrified her once she examined it. Why should her adult son need to consider her appliance needs when planning family recreation? Yet the financial dependency had created precisely this expectation. This boundary confusion extends in both directions. Adult children providing substantial support may begin feeling entitled to influence parents' decisions about housing, healthcare, daily activities, or other personal matters. What begins as genuine concern can gradually transform into control, with financial support becoming leverage in discussions about everything from medical treatments to social engagements. "I've started noticing how Curtis phrases things," Diane told Wendy. "We think you should see that specialist," or "we feel it's better if you don't drive at night anymore." The "we" implies he has equal say in my personal decisions because he's providing financial support. This breakdown of healthy boundaries creates relationship dynamics that more closely resemble parent-child relationships than the adult-to-adult relationship that should develop as children mature. The parent becomes infantilized, the child overburdened with inappropriate responsibility, and both lose the opportunity for the rich, mutually respectful connection that should characterize this life stage. After identifying these 8 compelling reasons, Diane knew she needed to take action. The realization that accepting money from Curtis was damaging not just their relationship, but potentially his marriage, career, and future prompted her to make a decision she had never anticipated. She invited Curtis and Nora for dinner at her apartment, preparing Curtis's favorite meal and setting the small dining table with care. Throughout the evening, she maintained a warm, relaxed atmosphere, waiting until they were enjoying coffee and dessert on the balcony before addressing the issue that had been weighing on her mind. "I've made an important decision," she said, setting down her cup and looking directly at Curtis. "I won't be accepting your financial support anymore." Curtis immediately began to protest, but Diane held up her hand. "Please hear me out. This isn't about pride or stubbornness. It's about understanding the true cost of what I've been accepting." Carefully, thoughtfully, she explained what she had learned, how his support, though given with love, had created hidden burdens she could no longer ignore. She spoke of the extra work hours he'd concealed, the strain on his marriage she'd witnessed, the dreams he'd deferred, and the subtle ways their relationship had changed since money began flowing between them. "But Mom, how will you manage?" Curtis asked, clearly concerned. "Your pension only covers the basics, and with your medical expenses—" "I've been giving that a lot of thought," Diane replied, "and I've realized there are alternatives we haven't explored, options that preserve both my financial security and our relationship." She outlined her plan. She would apply for a part-time position at the local library she'd seen advertised, attend a digital skills workshop at the community center to qualify for online tutoring opportunities, and join a crafting circle that sold handmade items at local markets. Additionally, she asked for Curtis's help finding a financial advisor who could help her better manage her existing resources. Instead of sending money, she suggested, "You could share your knowledge. Help me learn to navigate online banking more efficiently. Teach me about budgeting apps. Show me how to comparison shop online for better deals on prescriptions. These gifts of skill and time won't drain your resources, but will empower me for years to come." Curtis seemed skeptical at first, but as they discussed the possibilities, the tension visibly eased from his shoulders. By the evening's end, they had sketched out a new approach to family support, one based on knowledge sharing, skill building, and quality time, rather than financial dependence. The very next day, Diane put her plan into action. She submitted an application to the library, enrolled in the digital skills workshop, and attended her first meeting with the crafting circle. That evening, she sat on her balcony with a fresh sense of purpose. Watching the sunset with newfound clarity about the path forward, "I feel lighter already," she wrote in her journal. "Not because I believe these steps will immediately solve all my financial challenges, but because I've reclaimed responsibility for my own well-being. There's dignity in that, a dignity no monthly deposit could ever provide." If what you've heard resonates with your own experience or that of someone you love, please take a moment to like this video as we continue exploring this important topic. That same week, Diane met with Wendy at their usual spot in the community garden. As they weeded and watered, Diane shared her decision and the conversation with Curtis. "It wasn't easy," she admitted, gently pressing soil around a young tomato plant. "But it felt right. Like removing a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged." "Was there?" Wendy was quiet for a moment, her hands stilling on her trowel. "I've been accepting money from my son for 3 years now," she finally said. "After hearing your reasoning, I think I need to have a similar conversation with him." Together, they discussed how their community might better support seniors in maintaining financial independence, volunteering at the local school to earn additional income, starting a skill exchange program where seniors could offer services based on their professional expertise, approaching local businesses about flexible part-time positions suited to older adults. What began as a personal decision for Diane was evolving into a broader conversation about dignity, purpose, and the true nature of family relationships in later life. 2 weeks later, Diane hosted Sunday dinner for Curtis, Nora, and their children. The atmosphere was noticeably different, lighter, more authentic. Curtis wasn't checking work emails between courses. Nora's smile reached her eyes. The conversation flowed naturally around family stories, the children's activities, books they'd enjoyed recently, topics that had nothing to do with finances or obligations. After dinner, as Curtis helped clear the table, his son tugged at Diane's sleeve. "Grandma," he asked, "will you teach me how to make cookies like you used to teach Dad? He says you make the best chocolate chip cookies in the world." The simple request brought tears to Diane's eyes. This was the relationship she wanted with her family, one built on shared experiences, knowledge passed between generations, and genuine connection rather than financial obligation. The path forward wouldn't always be easy, but it would be authentic. As her grandchildren helped her measure flour and crack eggs, Diane reflected on how quickly their relationship dynamic had begun to heal once money was removed from the equation. What she had feared would create distance had actually brought them closer. allowing genuine needs and gifts to be expressed without the distorting lens of financial dependency. Diane knows her perspective might be uncomfortable for many parents who have grown accustomed to financial support from their adult children. Challenging this arrangement means confronting difficult realities about our financial situations and perhaps making significant lifestyle adjustments. It means learning new skills, exploring unfamiliar resources, and sometimes accepting modest circumstances with grace. Yet she has discovered that true wealth exists not in bank accounts, but in relationships unburdened by financial tension. The greatest gift parents can give their adult children isn't the opportunity to support them financially, but rather the freedom to build their own lives without unnecessary burdens. What about you? How might your family relationships change if money no longer stood between authentic connections? What small steps could you take today toward greater financial independence, no matter your age or circumstances? Perhaps it begins with a conversation, honest, loving, but clear about boundaries and expectations. Perhaps it starts with developing a new skill that could provide modest income while giving you a renewed sense of purpose. Or maybe it simply means becoming more aware of how financial dependencies might be subtly shaping your family dynamics. Consider how you might apply these insights to your own situation. If you're an aging parent currently accepting support from your children, could you initiate a candid conversation about the true impact of this arrangement? If you're an adult child providing financial support to parents, might there be alternative ways to express your love and concern without creating dependency? Remember that change need not happen overnight. Small steps toward greater independence and healthier boundaries can gradually transform relationships. The goal isn't to eliminate mutual support. Families should indeed care for one another, but rather to ensure that support flows in ways that preserve dignity, autonomy, and authentic connection for all generations. Diane's journey continues as she builds a new financial foundation for herself. Some days are challenging as she adjusts to part-time work and more careful budgeting. But each evening, as she sits on her balcony watching the sunset, she feels a growing sense of peace, knowing that her relationship with Curtis and his family now rests on the solid ground of genuine connection rather than financial obligation. The truest measure of successful parenting, she often reflects, isn't how much our children give us, but how much we continue to give them by not taking what they cannot truly afford to share. If you found wisdom in Diane's story that speaks to your own family situation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more insights that can transform your relationships in their golden years.